What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing two extremely bizarre vanishings. I've covered so many missing persons cases here on this channel, and between that and writing for the other channel I write for on YouTube, who specializes in mainly bizarre missing persons cases, it's safe to say that I've seen more than my fair share of highly strange disappearances. It isn't often that I cover true crime cases here on my channel anymore, because I feel like true crime channels are a dime a dozen, and a lot of the time it's hard to nail down the actual facts of those types of cases and separate the truth from speculation, no matter how hard I try. And I always end up offending someone in the victim's family or the person that I'm allegedly accusing. I just really don't like dealing with it. However, a lot of you have been asking me to do some more true crime, and I've been looking for cases of very bizarre disappearances that I haven't covered yet, but also that I don't see all over YouTube every single day. And today, I think I found two that you guys are going to really be blown away by. Some of these vanishings really serve to get your imagination going because of all the mysterious and seemingly nonsensical clues left behind, not to mention the bizarre circumstances the person disappears under. One of my favorite types of true crime cases to discuss are the almost vanished, or cases where people actually do go somewhere for some length of time, but they come back either with strange and sometimes unbelievable tales to tell, or they come back with no story to tell at all because for some reason they can't remember, and I am working on getting a bunch of those together. So think about when someone disappears only to come back but has no explanation for where they went or why it all happened. It seems like it would be an anomalous occasion under the best circumstances, right? I mean, this doesn't happen every day. Well, think again, because it does happen more than most people know, where people go missing more than once or twice, but then return without any explanation as to where they went. And it isn't because they simply don't want to talk about it. It's more like, for whatever reason, they can't talk about it. I know it sounds like it makes no sense, but trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what I'm referring to, because first up is Hannah Up, who went missing for a length of time on more than one occasion, but always then came back unable to remember where she was, what she had done, or how she had gotten there in the first place. However, eventually she disappeared once and for all, and no one has seen or heard from her since, so let's jump right in. Back in 2008, Hannah Up was a seemingly normal school teacher who at first glance seemed like she was living a regular, normal life. She taught at the Thurgood Marshall Academy, which is a public school in Harlem, New York, and she had no history of behavioral problems in or within her family, and she had no history of using alcohol or drugs either. She was mostly described by those who knew her best as friendly, outgoing, vivacious, intelligent, and fun-loving, and she was said to have been the life of the party no matter where she ended up. At first glance, Hannah lived a very happy and stable life and had no known enemies. So it was really strange when, on a beautiful August day in 2008, she left her apartment in Manhattan to go for her usual jog, but she didn't return when she was supposed to. When she still hadn't shown back up or contacted anyone the next day, her friends called the police and reported her as missing. The investigators found nothing amiss or missing in her apartment, and everything seemed to be there and in its rightful place. They found her Metro card, her purse, her wallet, cell phone, passport, and her wallet had all of her cash and credit cards inside of it. As more days went by with no sign or word from Hannah, the police started thinking the worst and that maybe she had been kidnapped or murdered when she went out for her jog that day. They finally launched a more intensive investigation, and that's when things started getting extremely weird. 9 days after she had initially vanished, and as her face was being splashed all over the news and other local media, along with everywhere on missing persons flyers, a man who was shopping at an Apple store in downtown Manhattan said he was 100% sure that he had run into Hannah Up. The witness said that he approached the woman and asked her if she was Hannah, but the woman responded that he must be mistaken, and he said she was seemingly in some sort of trance as she briskly walked away without looking back. After that initial sighting, it seemed like Hannah was spotted all over Manhattan and at Soho, at places like Starbucks, small shops, and even a well-known sports bar in the area, but it's like she was a ghost. Everyone who reported seeing her said she seemed like she was in some sort of trance or dazed state, and whether or not the woman everyone was seeing was Hannah or not, it could never be determined, because while witnesses did always call the authorities, the woman would be gone by the time they arrived to check out the situation. I don't know what the CCTV footage situation was like in 2008 in New York. I assume that they did have surveillance, but it was never mentioned in any of the sources that I found. 3 weeks after Hannah's disappearance in September of 2008, there would be an unusual discovery made in southern Manhattan. So it was September 16th, and two men working at a ferry dock on the river near the Statue of Liberty saw something out of place bobbing around in the water, and it didn't take long for them to realize it was a person. Some of the deckhands went out in the rescue boat, fully expecting to recover a dead body, but they were in for a real shock when they got out there and realized that although she was bobbing face down in the water, perfectly still and inert, Hannah was alive. They recognized her as the missing woman Hannah up right away, and she was rushed to the hospital. Hannah was found to have a mild case of hypothermia, severe sunburn, and she was severely dehydrated. Things would go from strange to downright bizarre as soon as she was lucid enough to speak and tell her story. First of all, when she spoke to the police, she seemed genuinely surprised that 3 whole weeks had passed and that she had been gone for that long. She said the last thing she remembered was leaving her apartment for a jog, and she had no memory at all of where she had been or what she had been doing in the interim. She had no recollection of shopping in Manhattan or Soho, and she actually thought that someone was playing some sort of elaborate trick or joke on her. She could not believe that she had been gone for 3 whole weeks. According to Hannah, as far as she knew, she had only been gone for about 10 minutes tops. And she told the New York Times, quote, "I went from going for a run to being in the ambulance," end quote. In the hospital the first night, Hannah was allegedly heard talking in her sleep, and she kept saying something about being in a lighthouse. But when her mother asked her about it the next day, Hannah couldn't remember her dreams at all and had no idea what her mother was talking about. Hannah was questioned intensively and extensively, and a whole slew of neurological tests were performed. But when those tests turned up nothing unusual and there was nothing in her memory about what had actually happened to her or where she had been, the best theory the police and doctors could come up with was that she had been suffering from dissociative fugue. We've talked about this in other videos too. I can't really pinpoint which ones, but I remember specifically speaking on that subject. Dissociative fugue is also popularly called Jason Bourne syndrome. It's an extremely rare and poorly understood condition that causes the person suffering with it to lose awareness of their identity and other autobiographical information for any length of time, although they still maintain the ability to function and survive. During the episodes, it's very common for the sufferer to create new identities and go off on unplanned trips. It can last for hours, days, weeks, months, or years, but it's almost always the result of some sort of powerful traumatic event in the person's life. And strangely enough, neither Hannah nor her family and loved ones could think of what could have possibly been the cause for it because, as far as she was aware, she had no trauma. So if she actually was suffering from this Jason Bourne syndrome thing, maybe it was some sort of repressed trauma that she had hidden away in her subconscious somewhere. But that's just my speculation. There really are no answers. In fact, Hannah had never had any sort of severe trauma inflicted on her in her whole life up to that point, and that's what made the whole thing so incredibly bizarre. More so than it initially seemed with everything that had happened leading up to that point. Like I said, maybe it was something she suppressed. However, psychiatrists even got Hannah's permission to hypnotize her and try to uncover what caused her to go into the fugue-like state because they were convinced that maybe she had dealt with some profound trauma but had possibly repressed it, but they never found anything like that in her subconscious mind during the sessions. Regardless of what actually happened and the fact that there was no evidence of it having happened, Jason Bourne syndrome was the best explanation at the time for what happened, and Hannah, she wanted to just go back to living a normal life again. She tried to do just that, but this is not where the story ends, and not by far. Hannah moved to Maryland for a fresh start and went right back to teaching, and at first she was loving her life and everything seemed perfectly fine and normal. However, in September of 2013, which was 5 years after her initial disappearance, Hannah Up disappeared again. It started this time with the local police calling Hannah's mother to tell her that Hannah's wallet and cell phone were left lying abandoned inside of a wooded footpath in Kensington, but there was no sign at all of where Hannah was or how the items had ended up there. She was missing for 2 whole days that time because she had made her way back to her house on her own after she said she woke up confused and lying in a shallow ditch next to an empty shopping cart. Once again, she had no memory of where she had been from the moment she left her house until she woke up 2 days later. It didn't escape investigators' notice that both disappearances happened in September and somehow involved water, but there's still no known connection between those two details. However, she would disappear for a 3rd time, again in September, and again there would be some involvement with water there too. So a year after the second disappearance, Hannah made the somewhat unusual move to the United States Virgin Islands in St. Thomas in the Caribbean, where she found a job once again as a teacher. Once again, everything seemed to be back to normal with Hannah, and despite surviving 2 major hurricanes while living there, she seemed very happy and content with her life again. She even told her friends and family that she intended to stay there indefinitely because she loved it so much. Then, on September 17th, 2017, Hannah casually told her roommates that she was going to work. She left that day as usual, but she never ended up coming back. When she didn't return by the next day, her friends found out she never made it to work. They then decided to go and look for her themselves. They found the clothes she had been wearing when she left the house folded neatly on the beach and her car keys lying nearby to where the clothes were. Her car was found in the parking lot near the beach and contained her wallet, keys, cell phone, passport, and her purse, which all of those things were inside of. Why had she removed her clothes, and where had she gone naked? No one knew what had happened to her, but everyone was very worried, wondering if she had stripped naked and gone swimming or snorkeling or something and gotten lost at sea. The authorities called in, and a search was started that included boats and helicopters, but there was no sign of Hannah anywhere. Morgues, hospitals, and homeless shelters all over the island were meticulously searched to try and find her, but it was all to no avail. With St. Thomas being such a small island, everyone thought that eventually she would be found, and quickly too, but she never was. It seemed as though she had gone into some sort of amnesic fugue state once again, but if that's the case, then she hasn't yet to this day snapped out of it. Hannah has never been found, and she's never returned. Just like with her first disappearance, there were sightings of Hannah all over the place in the beginning of the investigation, all over the small island. There was a report that she had been panhandling at a marina, and someone else said that they saw her hanging out around one of the homeless shelters. In every case of these alleged sightings, Hannah was reported as being in that same dazed and trance-like state, but none of the alleged sightings have led authorities or her loved ones any closer to actually finding her or finding out what happened to her. Hannah Up's story was featured in a documentary called Vanished in Paradise, and her friends and family still cling to hope that she's alive out there, but she may not know who she is. They believe she could be living a whole new life with no memory at all of who she really is or what happened to her. However, there's always the possibility that lurks in the backs of many of their minds that perhaps something sinister had happened to her and that she might not be alive at all anymore. Her friends and family do their best to remain hopeful, though, that she simply forgot who she is and where she's from. And they released a statement that said, quote, "We've done all the physical searching that I think we can do, other than having her posters put up everywhere. That's going to be the only way. Hopefully, if she sees one of them, if she's in her fugue state, it would at least get her to a point where she realizes something's wrong and she goes to get help." That's what we're hoping for. We have no way of knowing the length of time Hannah's condition and journey may fill. We are in this for the long haul, end of quote. My heart really does go out to these families. I mean, every time I do a case like this, it breaks me up a little bit because I think of, it's like, what if it was my family? Or what if it was me? I would want them to never give up hope. But then again, would I? Because it's quite possible, and this is just my opinion, that she walked into the water. And that's why they didn't find her on that tiny island. Because to get off, she would have had to have maybe had some help or had her passport. I'm not really sure how that works. But she would have, I don't think she would have gotten very far without being seen if she had just wandered off. So what happened to Hannah Up? How could someone go missing for weeks on end with no memory of where they had been or how they had gotten where they had ended up? Is there something more sinister at play here than just a very rare medical condition, an anomaly? I have to be honest here, guys, I couldn't help but keep thinking about the missing college-aged men who have been going missing all over the United States and Canada while out partying and randomly disappearing without a trace or without being caught on any sort of surveillance footage, and then ending up in nearby water sources they had no business being anywhere near in the first place. You guys have asked me so many times, like if I had $1 for every email where you guys were asking me to do a video on whether or not there were women who it happened to as well. The same with the college guys. But despite my many attempts at finding cases of females enduring the same types of tragedies, I couldn't find anything like that. Hannah's case makes me wonder if maybe that's because no one has connected the cases yet. Is there a significance of all of her disappearances happening in September or of the water sources that seem to be connected with all three of them? No one knows, and as of when I'm writing this script in January or February of 2024, there's been no updates or new information on what has happened to Hannah Up. I wonder if this is a rare case of a woman being the victim of whatever those young college-aged men were victims of. I don't know. Now, if there was more information on Hannah Up, she would have had this entire video dedicated to her, but unfortunately, I gave you guys all of the information I have on that case, and so I decided to move on to one more very bizarre and mysterious disappearance that I have not heard really anybody talking about, and that's the disappearance of Noah Donahoe. This one does end with Noah's death, but that doesn't make the situation any easier to understand or any less bizarre, so let's get into it. By all accounts, and according to everyone who knew him, Noah Donahoe was an average and typical 14-year-old boy. He lived with his mother Fiona, who was a single mother in Belfast, Ireland, and Noah was a super bright student in science and math who also excelled in sports. He had a very close relationship with his mom, and even though his father had moved to the United States for what I could only find described as business, Noah was very close with him as well, and the two kept in close contact. In June of 2020, he was just looking forward to summer vacation, no doubt, as almost all 14-year-olds are, and no one had any inkling at all that Noah would never get to do so, never get to be on summer vacation, because his life was about to become one bizarre, mysterious disappearance that would still be unsolved more than 3 years later. On June 21st, 2020, Noah got on his bicycle and rode to a local park to meet up with some friends because they were putting together and working on a project to win something called the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is apparently a big deal in the UK, and hundreds of thousands of young kids complete projects every year to compete for this prize. Noah had taken his bicycle to that exact same park so many times before, he knew the route like the back of his hand, and no one could have known there would be anything different about that time in particular. It's been reported that when he left his house, he was in a good mood and nothing was amiss with him at all. In fact, his mother said that he had been looking forward to working on the project with his friends, and when she said goodbye to him, she had no way of knowing it would be the last time she ever spoke to or saw her son. Noah promised to call her at 6:30, as he always did, and when he not only never called, but wasn't home by 9:30, which was more than an hour after his scheduled and agreed upon curfew, his mother was immediately worried. She called the police and reported him as missing, and so began the bizarre series of events that would unfold from that point forward. The police wasted no time in going around all of the local areas and looking at whatever CCTV footage they could find to see if they could spot young Noah and where he had been, possibly even where he had ended up. There were a lot of places where the cameras were ubiquitous, and it didn't take long for them to not only find footage of Noah, but to see where he went and most of his movements. However, it was all seriously strange and bizarre and would only get more confusing and confounding from there. He was first spotted on the camera within 5 minutes of having left his house as he rode down a busy street through a shopping area, and he had his backpack with him, which contained his laptop and some books. So the backpack is on his back in the beginning of the footage, but as he drives out of the busy area or rides out, it's simply gone off his back, and there's no seeing where it went, what happened to it, or when. The street that he was riding on is the busiest one in the whole town, but despite that fact, despite how many people were there in the crowds and how much footage there was no explanation at all, no footage of, and no witnesses coming forward about where that backpack had gone to. The next piece of footage that's reported on is one that shows Noah fall off his bicycle at around 6 p.m. at a busy intersection. A seemingly random vehicle is seen stopping to presumably ask Noah if he's okay, but he doesn't answer the bystander and takes off at a rapid speed on his bike. Not 3 full minutes later, Noah is again seen riding his bicycle, only at that time he is completely and totally naked, even without his helmet, on some other CCTV footage. You heard me, yes. Within the span of less than 3 minutes, he went from falling off his bike, seemingly perfectly fine, to riding around completely naked with no helmet or anything. So just as bizarre as the fact he's riding his bike naked is the fact there's no footage to show how he became that way. There's nothing in between the fall at 6 p.m. and the nakedness at approximately 6:03 p.m. that shows what happened to his clothes or even him getting off of his bicycle at all. This all happened in a neighborhood very far away from the route he should have taken and that he usually took to get home from that park, in an area of the city he was completely unfamiliar with and had no reason to be in the first place. This was not near the park where he was said to be meeting his friends. This was an area where he basically shouldn't have even been in the first place. The last known footage of Noah shows him riding his bike, still naked, and then getting off that bike to walk around a house toward a gated park, a different one from the original one where he was supposed to have met up with his friends, and he's never seen on any footage or ever again after that. He basically just seems to walk off the face of the earth after that. From when he left his home in the morning until he disappeared hours later, the amount of footage that the authorities were able to collect of Noah total was about 18 minutes worth. And none of it gave them any clues or got them any closer to understanding what happened to this poor little boy. He was only 14 years old. So why was he in that part of town, though? What happened to his bag and then later on to his clothes, and where did he end up? What brought him there in the first place, and why didn't he accept help from the car that pulled up and offered it when he fell before he stripped? Those are all great questions, but unfortunately, they're all still without any answers. Noah was a kid who had no trouble at school, no issues with mental health, no problems at home, or with either one of his parents. His teachers all said he was a bright student who was very involved in numerous extracurricular activities, and he was in the top of his class, having won various awards in academics and other things. He had been his usual well-adjusted, cheerful self who hadn't been acting strangely at all in the days leading up to his disappearance. He did not at all use alcohol or drugs and wasn't in with a bad or wrong crowd. When he had left his house that morning to go and meet his friends, he had been very excited about working on the project and at the prospect of winning the prestigious award. So there was nothing at all to indicate why he would ride off into a place where he didn't seem to know anyone and where he had no business being, or why he would ditch his book bag and laptop, strip off his clothing, and ride naked through the streets until he got off at a random house and seemingly disappeared into oblivion. The CCTV footage showed no signs of anyone pursuing or chasing him down, and even after his locker and bedroom, all of his things had been searched, there was no indication at all of any bullying, fear, or anything else that would have led anyone to understand what the hell was going on with him in his final hours. Nothing that would explain the seemingly random and bizarre behaviors. Even if he had been pursued, why would he take off his clothes? And where did the clothes in his backpack, as well as its contents, end up? The police launched an extensive and meticulous search for Noah, and they were able to find his bicycle and his cell phone, along with his helmet and his hoodie. However, the book bag, his shoes, underwear, and his t-shirt were never, ever recovered. The search lasted for 6 days before tragedy struck, and Noah was found deceased, lodged deep inside of a storm drain in the gated Seaview Park, which had likely been left unlocked by some careless maintenance worker. Maybe. That's more speculation. With the discovery of the body came even more strange and bizarre clues, and unfortunately left everyone with more questions than answers. There were no signs of a struggle either on the body or in the surrounding areas. There were no traumatic brain injuries, and in fact, there were no apparent injuries at all. His toxicology report was completely and totally clean, meaning he had no drugs or alcohol in his system either. The coroner stated that Noah, quote, might have, end quote, died from drowning, but couldn't say with absolute certainty whether or not he drowned, and he or she left the cause of death as undetermined because of how unclear it actually was. So the coroner could not determine cause of death. Although it had been estimated that the body had been in the drain for several days before it was finally discovered, there was almost no water damage and very little evidence of any scavengers having touched it, which is highly unusual for someone who's been in that type of place for a few days, let alone 5 or 6. Noah's mother, Fiona, commented on the state of her son's body by saying, quote, the tide comes twice a day in those tunnels, so he would have been submerged twice a day. But the only water damage to Noah's body was his hands and feet. And there's sewage in that tunnel, so sewage and bacteria would have done horrendous damage. Also, there was no rodent damage, no insect damage, end quote. It was all incredibly strange and confusing to say the least, but in my opinion at least, and I'm sure I'm not alone here, it's about to get a lot worse. Before the coroner even came back with their findings, the police had ruled out foul play completely. And they had decided somehow, that Noah had hit his head when he fell off his bike, even though the footage of him falling showed him doing no such thing. They said after he fell and hit his head, he became disoriented and fell into the drain where he drowned and passed away because of it. They continued the investigation, though, and eventually they did locate his laptop, which was found to be in the possession of a well-known criminal by the name of Daryl Pohl, allegedly. Pohl had previously been convicted of theft and armed robbery, but he claimed he simply found the backpack in a park, and with no evidence to link him to Noah or his death, Daryl Pohl was never pursued as a person of interest in the case, let alone a suspect. Noah's death remained to be considered an accidental drowning. But still, obviously, there were questions. Why in the world would police rule out foul play before the autopsy was even done? It wasn't even completed, and they were saying, yep, nothing to see here, total accident. How could a healthy, happy, and well-adjusted young kid randomly be riding his bicycle to meet friends 1 minute, and the next he's speeding on that same bike through an unknown area of town he has no business in, having stripped stark naked in under 3 minutes, only to find himself stuck in a storm drain where he then drowned? It doesn't and didn't make any sense at all. Most of the residents in the area where he was found said that they weren't even aware there was a storm drain there. So if the people that lived there didn't know it was there, then how did 14-year-old Noah know it was there when he hadn't ever been in that part of town before and had never been in that area? Also, that particular storm drain was frequently inspected and meticulously locked. So why wasn't it on that day at that time? The official theory of accidental drowning makes no sense whatsoever, and yet the police are still sticking to it. I don't understand how they're getting away with saying he hit his head when they can, there's proof he didn't. It's on the footage. Of course, like with anything like this, rumors were rampant. One rumor said that he had possibly been the victim of some sort of racist attack. Noah was a Catholic and mixed race, and he had been riding his bicycle around a mainly loyalist, Protestant, and predominantly white area of the city at the time of his disappearance. Yes, I rolled my eyes there. The idea was that it was a religious or racially motivated hate crime, but there was and haven't ever been any evidence to back that theory up. Nothing on the CCTV footage indicated that he had been attacked at all, let alone any reason that he was. And even if it had shown evidence for this theory, it doesn't explain why he was naked and where his backpack and clothing had gone. This next theory caught me off guard, as it involves someone whose work I am very much interested in, for better or for worse, guys. And this happened about a decade ago, but it says that what happened to Noah had something to do with his intense interest in the culture warrior and self-help guru Jordan Peterson, who authored many books, including one called 12 Rules for Life and Antidote for Chaos. I was very surprised to see Jordan Peterson's name brought up here. Jordan Peterson, much as he is now, but to a much less degree back then, was well known for his defiant stance against identity politics and political correctness, and his philosophy on life for young men was that they should be strong, disciplined, and always taking responsibility for their actions and for their own lives. I don't really see anything wrong with that. Noah had the book in his backpack the day he went missing, and that's where the connection was quote-unquote made. It's even alleged that he had had several conversations, or at least some exchanges, with Jordan Peterson himself, including one that said to have taken place the day before he vanished. The idea here, and I find it about as ridiculous as I do how Peterson's ideas are taken as so incredibly controversial, when in my opinion it's all basic and common sense, was that he had undergone some sort of initiation rite that went bad. However, and of course, the authorities couldn't find any proof of any of this and could find no correlation between the two things, found no evidence of wrongdoing on Jordan's part, and this theory went nowhere fast. Other ideas were that Noah was attacked by a homeless person or that he had taken his own life, again, with there being no evidence to back any of this up. Speculation was running rampant, as the rumors were at this point, and there were even some whispers about a police cover-up. The authorities denied all the allegations against them and basically begged the public to stop talking about such nonsense and continued to insist that Noah's untimely death, albeit that it was very bizarre, was nothing more than a mere accident. Death by misadventure, basically. Meanwhile, Noah's family got together and rallied against the version of events the police considered to be official, and his mother Fiona would say, quote, "If they, the police, tell me how Noah knew that storm drain existed, that would at least make sense to me. The police are saying that Noah climbed into that storm drain. Nobody has seen him climb into the storm drain, and I will never believe that Noah climbed into it. They're not looking at anything we," meaning Fiona's legal team, give them. We've brought them information about possible suspects. There is no point sugarcoating this. The police response was flawed. We need a new investigation. It's so obvious to us how badly this investigation was done. We are not accepting their narrative at all. There is not one word I accept. I am absolutely disgusted. It's insulting to Noah. It's disrespectful. They say he was in the storm drain for 6 days. Bearing in mind, to travel from where his body entered the storm drain to where it was found, he would have had to have climbed 950 meters through the tunnel complex, which we have heard on good authority that this is humanly impossible because of the obstructions and the chambers. End of quote. One other thing I found incredibly odd about this case that I want to mention before I end this video is the fact that the police have reams of files on this case and information about it that they've yet to make public. If this case is closed, as it was officially ruled an accidental drowning, even though the coroner couldn't be sure that's what happened at all and they had no evidence to prove that fact, then why not just release all of the information so that the public and the family can maybe at least get some semblance of closure and not have to live their lives guessing as to what's in the files and why the police won't release them. Some of the information that hasn't been released yet is the official coroner's report and additional information and notes taken by the coroner. Noah's online and cell phone activities, specifically the days leading up to and the date of his disappearance and eventual death, are also being kept secret and sealed, and this is all despite the family and public pleading for the information to be released and a petition that was signed by tens of thousands of people who want to know what happened to Noah Donahoe. If the police aren't hiding anything, and if this case was indeed accidental, then why do they feel the need to keep all of that information a secret still? Especially with the pleading and the public outcry, the pleading from this poor broken family. Why not just release it to at least his mother so the poor woman can finally maybe at least get some answers she can try to live with, instead of being forced to live in the never-ending nightmare of wondering what she doesn't know about the death of her precious little boy. This was her baby. At the end of the day, the death of Noah Donahoe has remained very much debated and extremely controversial for good reason. What happened to him out there that day? What did the friends say happened when he met up with them, and did he meet up with them at all? That information, I couldn't find that either. I couldn't find even that much information on this case, and I think there are some pretty important details when it comes down to it. How did he end up all the way across town and riding his bicycle naked through the streets 1 minute and disappearing a moment later only to turn up dead under such strange and suspicious circumstances? Seemingly impossible circumstances. Honestly, we probably won't ever know for sure, and with the police being as secretive and shady and sus as they're being and as they've been up to this point, this case will more than likely forever remain a mystery, unfortunately. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, and if you watched in the premiere and enjoyed hanging out with one another. So, my eyes have been tearing this whole video. I don't know if y'all have noticed. I had to keep stopping to wipe my eyes, to blow my nose. My voice is cracking. I guess I've got some winter allergies going on because I don't really feel sick, but I definitely don't feel myself, but the show must go on, literally, right? Please check out the description box for some important links. The links to all of my books on Amazon, Kindle, and paperback: Missing the Faith Theory, Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis and Beyond, the #1 bestseller, Danger at Your Door, Encounters with Black-Eyed Kids, the companion book to Danger at Your Door, Midnight Visitors, which is just encounters with the Black-Eyed Kids, and Campfire Stories Volume 1. If you have ever read any of my books, please go on Amazon and rate and review them. Even if it was like 4 years ago when the first one came out and you just haven't done that yet, guys, it really, really helps keep the books like in the public eye on Amazon. It helps the author more than anyone would really realize if you don't write for a living. Also, ways to donate to the channel: PayPal and Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link if y'all want to send me any kind of little gift. The schedule, the tentative schedule for most days, most weeks on the channel is also in the description box. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If no one told you today, you are beautiful, amazing. You are able to be co-creator with the universe of your own life. You just have to not focus so much on the nonsense, not worry so much about what you don't have. Focus on your goals, what you're trying to achieve. If nobody told you this today, I got your back and I believe in you. If you need me for anything, if you want to send in your own encounter stories for listener encounters, encounters with extraterrestrial, paranormal, supernatural, otherworldly, whatever the case may be, I want to do another listener encounters soon, and I need 1 or 2 more stories to be able to do so. My email is GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!